Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week, joining us from New York is Ademar Perez. Hi, Ademar. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Vasco. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, Ademar is cultivating high-performing product teams as an Agile coach at Xero. He fell in love with the Agile way of working after seeing 5 or 6 Scrum teams collaborate and develop a customer-facing application. Since then, Ademar has helped over 30 teams become self-organizing and high-performing, which is exactly what we're going to talk about this whole week. Ademar, that was a short intro. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Yeah, absolutely, Vasco. So I actually started, I went to the university and studied finance. And I did a whole bunch of internships within the technology space. And that's what really opened my eyes to career technology, just getting that internship experience at the university. And shortly after graduating, I joined a big organization, technology organization, as a project manager. And at that time, that was a dream. My dream was, how can I find a job or a role that encompasses figuring out business, working with people, and working with technology? And project manager role was that dream job for me. Then going into the world and going through the doors and being a project manager was super challenging. But also, I started to question that way of working. I felt like when I was a project manager, I had so much power within project teams. I always questioned, why was I delegating work to such experienced engineers? Just didn't quite make sense to me. I felt like I wasn't unlocking the greatest potential of those engineers on the team. And so I decided to search for other ways of working, and Agile fell in my lap, where I was doing a rotational program within this technology organization, and I landed in a scaled Agile environment where I got to shadow a chief Scrum Master. So basically, he was the manager of all of the Scrum Masters on the floor. And there were 5 to 6 teams working on a customer-facing application. And I got to see a really complex environment really evolve through the Agile way of working. And I haven't stopped drinking the Agile Kool-Aid since, Vasco.
Yeah, so I myself have a background in project management, so I can totally relate to the first part of your introduction, and I can especially relate to the second part of your introduction, because also myself, when I started working with Agile, at that time it was only one team, so not 5 or 6 teams like you did, but with one team. I started to see how that way of working was so much more effective and also much more fulfilling for the people involved. They were growing technically. They were growing also, personally and individually. They were growing as a team. And that was all facilitated. It wasn't caused. Of course, the people did it, but it was facilitated by the Agile way of working. At that time, it was Scrum, so I can totally relate to that. Now, Ademar, of course, not all is a bed of roses in the Agile world, as we know. So today's Monday, we want to dive into one of those stories where you, as a Scrum Master, you did your best, but the best just wasn't good enough at that time, and you had a learning experience like we all do, and we want to share here on the Monday. So, Ademar, before we dive into the learning, first tell us that story. How did it start?
Yeah, Vasco. So I remember 2 years into my career as a Scrum Master, I was working in a consulting environment where I was shipped off over to the client to help the consulting team that was integrated with the client to deliver a beta application. So the situation there was that the team was behind on their contractual commitments. So basically, the project was on fire. The client wasn't happy. The consultants on our end weren't happy as well. They were burning out. They were working long hours to try to hit the contractual commitment. And I was brought in as a Scrum Master to I guess help facilitate and ease the fire. So I was brought in to help the team effectively break down the work and communicate effectively with the client on when that beta application will launch. And there was at that time there was a sort of a high level estimation that was made by the project sponsor, where he really promised the client the world in 3 months. And after I came in and I brought some cross-functional folks like a solution architect that was external to the team to collaborate with the consultants, we determined that the project was gonna take about a year and a half to launch.
Wow, that must have caused some chilling conversations.
Yeah, that was tough situation to walk into, Vasco, and I was inexperienced in my role, and so I was pretty much playing the role of spokesperson for the Scrum team, for our program sponsor and also the client. And so I think this is where it all went wrong, Vasco, where all of the communication was being funneled through me as a Scrum Master. And at the moment, it felt great. I was communicating what was going on day to day in weekly meetings with the client. And there was a situation where I decided to be the messenger of a very key piece of information, which was letting the client know that this project is not going to take 3 months. It's going to take a year and a half to complete. Well, long story short, Vasco, the client was not happy to hear that, but she thanked me the next day and said, Ademar, thank you for letting me know that's what's going on. This is what I've been hoping to hear this whole time. She wanted to hear the truth about what was going on. And however, when I went back to my program sponsor, he didn't like it. He didn't like that I shared that level of transparency with the client. He thought that I was throwing the team under the bus. And so I saw that as a failure, more of a big learning, Vasco. And I think about the dangers of a Scrum Master being that spokesperson for the team. And I think about if I can go back and do everything again, I would actually communicate that in a cross-functional way where I would bring the key players into the room, the product owner, empowering them to speak up about where the team is, bringing the tech lead into the room as well with both the client and the program sponsor, and having them have that crucial conversation about why this is going to be a year and a half versus 3 months.
When you talk about I would bring the key players into the room, this kind of triggers the thought in my mind that one of the key aspects of being a Scrum Master is to understand that everything that happens through other people, right? So the decisions happen through other people. The success happens through other people. Of course, the bad news also happen through other people, but it also means that we need to make sure that the environment is there where people can actually have these conversations, like you said, these crucial conversations. And one might phrase it that, the Scrum Master is the facilitator of the communication, right? You're making sure the right people are talking to the right people. I would go further and say that the Scrum Master has the big and very often ignored responsibility of creating an environment, the space, the relationships, the connections, the frequent check-ins, the feedback loops that allow these conversations to even get started. I mean, one way this story might have gone is that the planning would have been done without you knowing about it. The understanding that the project was late would have been done without you knowing about it. And people would let you in the ignorance and, in the dark, and you would still be communicating, yeah, this is going to be delivered on time, but you wouldn't know about it, right? So I think that, bringing the key players into the room is a very practical, very pragmatic way to describe what I think is one of the key responsibilities of the Scrum Master, which is to create the conditions for those conversations to happen, but not to take the conversation into their own hands. Just create the conditions and, follow up and, have one-on-ones, set the right meetings, ask the right questions, whatever that might be. But that was my key takeaway. How about you, Ademar? What do you want the key takeaway for our listeners to take from this?
Oh, yeah, that's perfect, Bosco. I mean, oftentimes it's hard to measure what a Scrum Master should be doing, coming on into a space with teams. And I agree, creating that environment where you're creating the environment of collaboration, but also driving up psychological safety and transparency, I think, is a prerequisite to trust. And that's what you're doing when you're bringing the right people into the room at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. Create an environment that creates transparency just by the way it is designed. That's a great point.
And Vasco, by the way, at that time, this team was struggling with story points. And so I was always looking for innovative ways for team to get to the same outcome when it comes to estimations. And I started to really dive into your work of no estimates, which was key at that time. So
right,
thank you.
Maybe you're welcome. Maybe we'll talk more about that in the episodes to come. So stay tuned, everybody. This might come up again. Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.